Hi there, and welcome back to Be Your Own Hero. Let me ask you this. Have you ever dated someone who seemed really into you at first, but distant the next? Or maybe they were really independent to the point where emotional closeness just felt impossible, leaving you confused, frustrated, and questioning your value in the relationship. Well, here's the thing. You might have been dating somebody with an avoidant attachment style. Now, avoidant attachment styles come in two different styles. There's fearful and dismissive. While both struggle with intimacy, they show it in very different ways. And today I'm going to look at how you can recognize the different styles, how they affect your relationships, and what you can do to navigate this dynamic, whether you stay or walk away. So let's dive in. So before we look at the difference between fearful and dismissive avoidant styles, let's start with the basics, and that is looking at what is avoidant attachment. So avoidant attachment is one of the insecure styles of attaching. People with this style tend to struggle with emotional closeness and vulnerability. They fear dependence on others and they fear others depending on them. And they prioritize independence and control in their relationships. Avoidants develop these patterns as a response to childhood experiences where closeness might have felt unsafe or unpredictable or even overwhelming. But here's where it gets interesting. Not all avoidants are the same. So let's break down the key points between fearful avoidant and dismissive avoidant. Okay, so fearful avoidant is also called disorganized attachment style. And these people are caught in an emotional tug of war. They really crave connection. They also really fear it at the same time. Fearful avoidants deeply want intimacy, but they're terrified of being hurt, rejected, or abandoned. This leads to a push-pull dynamic where one moment they're deeply affectionate and then the next they're quite distant. Okay, another thing is that they're highly reactive to emotional triggers. So fearful avoidants will often struggle with unresolved trauma, which can cause them to overreact or withdraw when emotions are running high. They also struggle with trust. So they want closeness, but they actually expect to be betrayed and abandoned. And that just keeps them from fully opening up. So in relationships, you might feel like you're on an emotional roller coaster. One day they're showering you with attention and affection, and the next they're just pulling away without any explanation. They might accuse you of being too needy, only to later admit that they fear losing you. The bottom line is that fearful avoidants are stuck in this cycle of wanting love but pushing it away out of fear. Now, if this sounds familiar, hang tight because we'll talk about what to do later in the video. But first, let's look at dismissive attachment style. So dismissive avoidants avoid intimacy by building emotional walls. So they value independence more than anything else. Dismissive avoidants see emotional closeness as a threat to their autonomy. And they view dependence as weakness, whether that's yours or theirs. They also tend to suppress their emotions. So they're not overly reactive. But instead of expressing their feelings, they tend to shut down or dismiss emotional topics altogether. And this can make them seem quite cold or emotionally distant. They also avoid vulnerability if they can. Dismissive avoidants struggle to open up. They struggle to open up about their emotions. And they often will choose to just detach and end the relationship rather than risk being hurt. So if they get a bit too close, often they'll just detach and leave for no reason. So in relationships, what this looks like is that they might just feel like they're not really fully there emotionally. They prioritize their work, their hobbies, or their personal projects over the relationship. And during conflict, they just withdraw. They tend to avoid confrontation and they'll just shut you out completely if they get the opportunity. So the bottom line here is that dismissive avoidants really keep their emotional distance. And they do this to maintain control and avoid emotional vulnerability. And this can leave you feeling invisible or really unimportant in the relationship. Now, it's conflict that generally reveals the biggest differences between the two styles. Fearful avoidants in conflict are quite emotionally reactive. So fearful avoidants might lash out, they might cry, or they might just stonewall you completely when they're being treated. They do have a huge fear of abandonment, and they might say things like, "You don't care about me," even as they're the ones that are pulling away. And in conflict with them, there's a real push-pull dynamic. They might withdraw emotionally, but then they'll still reach out later seeking some reassurance. Dismissive avoidance in conflict, they tend towards emotional detachment. So dismissive avoidance will tend to shut down completely. Often they'll just refuse to even engage in conflict. And they like to avoid vulnerability by brushing you off with statements like, "Oh, it's all in your head," or "You're overthinking this," or they might just say, "Let's drop it. Just let's drop it." You might not talk about it at all. They do have a very high focus on independence. So they might prioritize cooling off alone. So they might leave for a week and you don't hear from them. Or they might want to just go into their cave, or they might go out drinking with friends. So they'll spend time elsewhere and they won't engage with you at all in that period. So whether you're dating fearful avoidant or dismissive avoidant, in each case, the avoidant partner's response can leave you feeling invalidated, invisible, and emotionally drained. Dating someone with an avoidant attachment style can be quite challenging, but it doesn't have to mean that the relationship is doomed. So let's look at how you can navigate these dynamics whilst also protecting your own well-being. Firstly is to understand their triggers. Fearful avoidance, fear rejection and abandoning. Dismissive avoidance, fear losing their independence. So when you understand their triggers, you can approach conversations with compassion rather than frustration. So step 2 will be communicate clearly. So you want to use I statements so you can express how you feel without them feeling blamed and shutting off or overreacting. Okay, so for example, you might say something like, "I feel hurt when you shut down during arguments." Or you might say, "I need open communication to feel secure." Okay, so set boundaries, and that's the third thing. Boundaries are not ultimatums. They're tools to maintain your own emotional health. So an example of a boundary could be by letting them know something like, "If you pull away, I won't chase you. I need mutual effort for this relationship to work." Okay, or you might say, "I can't stay in a relationship where my needs are consistently dismissed." So focus on setting boundaries and increasing your self-worth. So step 4 is to focus on self-worth. Avoidantly attached people often trigger insecurities in their partners. Just try to remember that their behavior is not a reflection of your self-worth. Just to try to build your sense of self outside the relationship as well, through hobbies, through friendships, and through personal growth. And step 5, if you're struggling, you could consider counseling or some kind of therapy or coach. And if the relationship feels stuck, professional help can provide tools to navigate attachment wounds, both yours and theirs. Okay, and one important thing to remember is that if a relationship becomes emotionally abusive, it's okay to walk away. You can't heal someone who is not ready or willing to work on their own stuff. Okay, so sometimes, despite your best efforts, the relationship might not change at all. If your avoidant partner consistently refuses to communicate, invalidates your feelings, or just leaves you feeling really emotionally drained and unimportant, it may be time to let go. You deserve a relationship where you feel safe, valued, and loved without having to chase it. So, are you dating a fearful or avoidant attacher? Understanding their attachment style is the first step to breaking free from toxic cycles or finding ways to build a healthier connection. So your challenge this week is to reflect on your relationship dynamic and ask yourself, am I getting the love and connection that I deserve? If not, take a step towards self-care, whether that's setting a boundary, writing out your needs, and gaining some self-awareness about this. So that's it from me today. If you found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more content on relationships, growth, and healing. And remember, you are worthy of a love that feels safe, stable, and secure. I will see you in the next video.